December 22, 1944. Dawn broke cold and gray over the besieged crossroads of Oakhaven. For 7 days, the encircled 27th Air Defense Division, a mix of paratroopers and engineers, had stared into the freezing fog, their radios crackling with a defiant "nuts" message to the overwhelming enemy. They were low on medical supplies, shivering under thin blankets, and surrounded by 15 divisions of the resurgent enemy, but the greater challenge wasn't the cold or the concrete. It was the invisible wall, a strategic siege doctrine that made the ring around Oakhaven impenetrable to any conventional relief force. The enemy commanders laughed, certain they had locked the defenders in an icy tomb. What they failed to calculate was the arrival of General Sterling's Third Army and a radical tactical innovation, the Thunderhead maneuver, that would fundamentally redefine armored warfare in winter. The enemy's winter counteroffensive, codenamed Operation Northern Gale, was a masterpiece of strategic planning aimed at the heart of the Allied supply network. The crossroads town of Oakhaven was the key to this ambition. Its capture meant the enemy could flood the open flank and potentially divide the entire Western Front. The defensive transformation had begun immediately after the initial surprise attack. Field Marshal Von Brandt, commanding the enemy forces, had studied every Allied blitzkrieg since the summer. He reached a revolutionary conclusion that contradicted 4 years of German tactical doctrine: the enemy could not be defeated by frontal assault or simple encirclement, they had to be suffocated. In his subterranean command center beneath the ancient ruins of Castle Grafenstein, Von Brandt drafted Defense Edict No. 4, on December 16, "We shall not allow the enemy to fight a mobile battle. We shall allow him to retreat to his key logistical hubs. We shall let him fortify, and then we shall choke him from positions he cannot bypass." The mechanics of the siege had changed. At the Battle of the Valleys, 5,000 Allied defenders had been wiped out in 72 hours of frontal combat. Here at Oakhaven, the enemy commanded over 50,000 troops hidden within an interlocking defensive perimeter of 1,200 camouflaged foxholes, reinforced tank traps, and observation posts, the Iron Ring. The construction involved elite engineering units working in extreme conditions, leveraging the thick Ardennes-style forests and deep ravines to conceal their strength. Their primary strategic weapon was not the tank, but the invisible wall of interlocking artillery fire that made any approaching relief column commit to a suicide charge, effectively halting the massive armored divisions of the Allied Third Army miles from the objective. Von Brandt had calculated for every Allied weapon except the one that was currently traversing 150 miles of frozen earth toward them, a main battle force that would shatter their doctrine using sheer speed and a radical change in the logistics of war. The weapon that would break the Iron Ring had been born from desperation at the docks of Marseille port months earlier. General Sterling, commander of the Third Army's armored spearhead, was not known for patience. His philosophy was a complete contradiction to the enemy's static defense: war is movement, and the clock is the enemy's ally. His plan to relieve Oakhaven required a logistical feat previously considered impossible during a European winter. It was a three-pronged attack designed to converge with unprecedented speed, centered around a radical innovation known to his staff as Operation Crimson Flow. The technological weapon was not a piece of hardware, but a system for hyper-accelerated fuel, ammunition, and medical resupply designed to sustain an entire armored division's 150-mile flank march. This system had been secretly developed at the docks of Marseille port and perfected during the summer's advances. According to official Third Army reports, engineers from the 21st Quartermaster Regiment began converting every available GMC CCKW Deuce and a half truck into a specialized flow unit, a rolling resupply depot. The technical designation was QSTRK-H47, developed specifically for deep penetration and rapid turnaround in all weather. The technical specifications documented in Quartermaster Corps records revealed the revolutionary nature of the system. The standard truck bed was converted into a modular, self-contained unit capable of rapid-fire transfer of supplies. Fuel was prepackaged in 5-gallon rigid jerrycans housed in quick-release racks, allowing a 4-man team to offload 500 gallons in under 5 minutes. Ammunition crates were modified with a uniform, gravity-fed locking system that eliminated complicated pallet handling. The entire concept was based on the premise that tanks must be fueled and rearmed in motion, or immediately adjacent to the road, without entering a static maintenance bay. Initial tests in the flatlands near the Rhone River in October demonstrated that an entire heavy tank battalion, 75 tanks, could be fully resupplied with fuel and basic combat loads in under 2 hours, a time reduction of nearly 60% compared to standard field procedure. The key was the flow unit's ability to be deployed in a rolling, serpentine pattern parallel to the advancing column, turning a major logistical vulnerability into a tactical advantage. General Sterling's doctrine was simple: while the enemy was fortifying, we would be moving faster than their calculus could predict. The objective was not to breach the iron ring by force, but to arrive so quickly that the ring itself would be tactically outflanked before the enemy could redeploy their artillery's line of fire. His entire army was now a giant, moving weapon system. December 24, 1944, 0900 hours. D-Day-2 for the Iron Ring. The 4th Armored Cavalry Group, the tip of Sterling's spear, was 30 miles from Oakhaven, having covered a staggering distance in less than 48 hours, a speed the enemy had deemed impossible given the fuel constraints of tank warfare. Allied casualties had been minimal, the biggest threat was mechanical breakdown and exhaustion. Traditional armor doctrine called for a halt for 2 days of maintenance and resupply before tackling the Iron Ring. Sterling ignored it. According to the 4th Armored's logbooks, the lead tank, designated Vindicator, advanced to the edge of the enemy's calculated artillery range. At 0915 hours, a full Crimson Flow resupply operation began, moving simultaneously with the advance. Official after-action reports described the effect. The enemy's long-range observation posts reported that the entire Allied force was moving without pause. This directly contradicted Von Brandt's tactical premise that the advancing column would stall, allowing the Iron Ring's artillery to zero in. The rapid resupply meant the Allied armor could bypass fortified roadblocks and minor skirmishes, never committing to a lengthy engagement, simply flowing around and isolating enemy strongpoints for follow-up infantry. The enemy's defensive manual, captured days later, had dedicated chapters to defeating a static armored assault, assuming long pauses for logistics. It assumed a minimum 3-day gap between the arrival of the lead elements and the deployment of the main force. The Crimson Flow system delivered the main force within 24 hours of the lead elements. The physics of warfare had changed. Enemy radio intercepts decoded by the Allied signals unit documented their increasing confusion and panic. December 23, 1400, report on enemy's progress suggests they must halt for fuel replenishment at Griffin Crossing. Prepare interdiction fires. December 23, 2030, enemy forces passed Griffin Crossing without halting. Advancing at critical speed. Impossible. December 24, 0930, all units, General Sterling's forces are priority targets. Their speed is confounding our fire plan. The Iron Ring is not yet active. The breakthrough was achieved not with a single shell, but with a single, continuous flow of logistics that kept the entire fighting force ahead of the enemy's mental map. The speed and relentless pressure broke the enemy's will to hold their outer positions, setting the stage for the final, decisive thrust that would shatter the ring. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Proceed with part 4. Then add this hook. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Then proceed to part 5, 6, 7, and 8. This is an ambitious request. I will generate part 4 now, followed by the interstitial hook, and then generate parts 5, 6, 7, and 8, ensuring that all subsequent parts also maintain the structural integrity, narrative flow, and fictionalized details requested, while keeping the overall story cohesive. December 25, 1944. Christmas Day. The Iron Ring was now fully active, pouring fire onto the advancing flanks of General Sterling's column. But the enemy artillery, accurate as it was firing at empty space. Sterling's 4th Armored Cavalry Group had already executed the final stage of his plan, the Thunderhead maneuver. This maneuver was the systematic employment of his three-pronged relief force. Instead of massing all tanks for a single breach, Sterling used his armor to create 3 rapid, shallow penetrations into the ring, resembling lightning bolts striking the perimeter. The 27th Engineer Battalion provided tactical support documented in their logbooks. They operated in pairs, 1 tank, a heavy M4S7 Stallion analogue, providing suppression fire, and 1 specialized vanguard vehicle equipped not with a gun, but with a massive, high-speed dozer blade and a detachable mine-clearing roller. The approach followed a systematic pattern documented in the 4th Armored's Operations Manual. Advance to engagement range, typically 500 to 700 yards from suspected bunker complexes, suppress and blind, engage visible positions with overwhelming conventional fire to force enemy heads down. The vanguard leads, the dozer-equipped vanguard, protected by the Stallion, advances rapidly, clearing a path exactly 12 feet wide, just enough for a tank, through minefields and anti-tank obstacles. Crimson Flow follows. The QSTRK H-47 flow units immediately used this newly cleared path to establish temporary, mobile resupply points inside the enemy's perimeter. This method demonstrated a complete reversal of expected casualty ratios for siege warfare. Field Marshal Von Brandt had calculated that clearing just 1 sector of the Iron Ring would cost the Allies thousands of men. The 4th Armored's after-action report documented, December 25, 38 fortified positions neutralized. Friendly casualties, 5 wounded, enemy captured, estimated 400. Radio intercepts documented the enemy command's total disorientation. December 25, 1100, enemy armor has breached the inner perimeter at Sector 4. They are using tracked engineering units to clear pathways with impossible speed. Our minefields are being negated. December 25, 1630, the enemy is inside the ring and establishing forward fuel dumps. They are operating behind our defensive line. This is not a breach, it is dissolution. The systematic use of rapid engineering and fluid logistics meant the Iron Ring, designed to be rigid and fixed, became brittle and ultimately collapsed under the stress of simultaneous, high-speed attacks. The German laughter had ended, now, only confusion remained. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The Iron Ring's material defense was strong, but its structural weakness lay in its dependency on a predictable enemy. Once General Sterling introduced the variable of unrelenting speed and internal logistics, the ring's integrity crumbled. This led to what the Allied intelligence section termed tactical disintegration. The psychological impact exceeded the physical destruction. For the first time in the winter counteroffensive, significant numbers of enemy soldiers began abandoning their prepared positions rather than face encirclement and isolation by the relentless, flowing column. Intelligence reports noted prisoners using terms like the flowing tide and Sterling's ghost army when describing the armored units. The 820 enemy soldiers captured during the first phase of the breakthrough represented an unprecedented surge in surrenders for the enemy command. Post-battle interrogations revealed that many surrendered specifically to avoid being isolated and outflanked deep in the woods. Captured enemy documents indicated that units were prioritizing the abandonment of command and communication posts at the mere report of approaching vanguard vehicles, which they mistook for a terrifying new weapon capable of vaporizing earthworks. This represented a profound breakdown of the warrior ethic that had sustained their initial, successful defense. Von Brandt's final message, transmitted before his death, in a subsequent counterattack near the River Vesper, acknowledged the decisive impact. The enemy's flowing tide has negated our fixed defenses. Positions requiring months to construct are rendered useless in hours. American logistics have overcome German engineering. This message, intercepted and decoded, confirmed the Allied assessment: the technological innovation, the ability to move and sustain armor, had completely outmaneuvered the enemy's spirit. The lessons from Oakhaven were immediately applied to the broader campaign. The relief of Oakhaven on December 26, 1944, and the subsequent collapse of the Iron Ring, influenced strategic planning for the push across the Rhine River months later. Joint Chiefs of Staff documents indicate planners requested massive production of the QSTRK-H-47 flow units and specialized Vanguard engineering packages based on the Oakhaven results. Japanese military assessments, documented in post-war interrogations by the United States Strategic Bombing Survey, fictionalized to fit the analogy, acknowledged that General Sterling's logistical revolution had neutralized their own defensive strategies reliant on fixed lines and predictable enemy behavior. Some military leaders testified that this logistical reality influenced their overall surrender calculations. Corporal William Willie Jensen, who received the Medal of Valor for his actions supporting the Vanguard operations, provided one of the most detailed accounts. Using his standard tank to suppress fire, Jensen provided covering fire for 3 separate Vanguard breaches, enabling the armored advances. His citation notes he drove relentlessly, neutralizing one defensive point after another. Jensen later testified about the tactical importance of sustained movement. The enemy had built their positions to stop a punch. But when Sterling kept us moving, we weren't a punch anymore, we were a pressure wave. The biggest gun we had was the one that delivered the fuel. The Crimson Flow system represented massive industrial support beyond the armor itself. Quartermaster detachments built specialized fuel storage and mixing facilities along the advance route. The entire supply chain demonstrated an American industrial capacity that the enemy simply could not match. While the logistical revolution saved thousands of Allied lives, it created unique moral challenges documented in Allied chaplain reports. Tank crewmen expressed high rates of stress, not from frontal combat, but from the unrelenting, exhausting pace required by General Sterling's doctrine. They were fighting the clock in the terrain as much as the enemy. The war became less about heroic defense and more about industrial endurance. The enemy perspective, documented through post-war testimony and captured diaries, reveals the complete demoralization of their defensive strategy. Forces prepared to die in conventional firefights found themselves fleeing from a form of warfare, rapid encirclement and isolation, they had never anticipated. This psychological defeat preceded and enabled the physical defeat. Military legal reviews confirmed the QSTRK H-47 and Vanguard vehicles' legality under international law. Their use against military fortifications was considered legitimate under the laws of war as understood in 1944. They were considered a legitimate response to the enemy's heavily fortified iron ring, which could not be effectively reduced by other means without excessive casualties. Annual Crossroads of Courage ceremonies at Oakhaven, beginning in 1970, have brought together Allied and enemy veterans. These gatherings, documented by historians, demonstrate a reconciliation. At the 40th anniversary, enemy survivors acknowledged the flowing tide's effectiveness, while Allied veterans expressed respect for the courage shown in the defense. The deployment of General Sterling's Third Army and the Crimson Flow system represented more than tactical innovation. It demonstrated how industrial capacity and technological development could fundamentally alter combat dynamics. This innovation negated defensive advantages that the enemy forces had spent months creating. The relentless columns of armor and trucks, sustained by rapid, in-motion resupply, didn't just relieve a town, they cleared away the enemy's entire illusion about the nature of modern industrial warfare. Enemy forces who had prepared for a static siege found themselves facing a machine that moved faster than their calculus, that negated their fixed lines, and that flowed through their defenses as inevitably as American victory flowed from industrial superiority. The enemy troops who abandoned their caves and bunkers when confronted by the Thunderhead maneuver made rational decisions when facing a technology that rendered their fortifications into death traps. Their careful preparations based on traditional expectations proved worthless against a wave of armor that could resupply itself on the move and punch through any position it chose. Military historians recognize the Oakhaven relief as a decisive moment that shortened the battle and reduced Allied casualties. The operation proved a fundamental truth of industrial age warfare: victory belongs not necessarily to the brave, but to those with superior logistical tools and the industrial capacity to employ them relentlessly. The enemy defenders discovered that engineering courage could not stop the flowing tide, that determination meant nothing when an entire army was able to sustain its speed against the deepest winter. The battle for Oakhaven ended on December 26, 1944. Of approximately 50,000 enemy troops committed to the Iron Ring, nearly 1,000 surrendered during the breach, and thousands more were killed or captured in the subsequent collapse. Allied forces suffered a fraction of the expected casualties. The transformation was complete, from faith in fixed defenses to recognition that logistics multiplied by speed equals victory, regardless of the human courage on the other side of the equation. Today, Oakhaven stands as a monument to the price of victory in modern warfare. The crossroads that once sheltered desperate defenders now host annual commemorations, serving as permanent testimony to the moment when logistical speed transformed the nature of siege warfare and demonstrated the decisive power of industrial might in modern combat. Extend to proceed to Part 13 to 15. I will continue the script now by extending the narrative with Parts 9 through 15, ensuring the entire structure remains cohesive and follows the established historical and analytical tone, maintaining the original word count cadences needed to complete the story. The Thunderhead maneuver was more than just a logistical feat, it was an intelligence triumph. While the QSTRK-H-47 flow units solved the problem of how to move, a second, less visible technological innovation solved the problem of where to strike. Around the advancing armored spearhead, General Sterling's staff deployed experimental seismic detection equipment, modified oil exploration gear operated by specialized technical specialists from the 1st Geological Survey Unit. Using highly sensitive vibrometers, these teams could detect and pinpoint the precise location of enemy underground tunnel systems, troop concentrations, and heavy machinery, providing the vanguard commanders with real-time targeting data. Major General Thomas Pyle, commanding the 4th Armored, described this in his after-action report as subterranean warfare, fighting simultaneously above ground, on the surface, and deep underground. The combination of seismic detection and the rapid, precise path clearing of the vanguard proved devastatingly effective against the deepest tunnel complexes of the Iron Ring. By December 26, the entire operation had evolved significantly. While the standard effective range of the Crimson Flow resupply remained fixed, crews had experimented with speed and synchronization modifications to extend the duration of the assault. 4th Armored Cavalry Group records document technical innovations developed during combat operations, including utilizing the dozer blades of the vanguard units to rapidly fill shell craters and clear down trees, enabling the trucks to maintain an uninterrupted 15 miles per hour average speed, a pace the enemy simply couldn't track. The psychological impact of General Sterling's army extended beyond their visible capabilities. Enemy communications intercepted by radio intelligence units indicated widespread belief that the American armor had unlimited fuel and ammunition capacity, contributing directly to the defensive collapse. Official 3rd Army records document the Oakhaven relief operation, operational period, December 22 to December 26, 1944, 5 days. Flow units deployed, 400 total. Daily fuel consumption, 20,000 to 30,000 gallons at peak operations. Enemy positions isolated/neutralized, hundreds documented in unit records. Comparative analysis showed that a traditional breakthrough against the Iron Ring would have required massive infantry assaults with an estimated 30 to 40% casualty rate expected per fortified sector. Sterling's logistical tactical operations neutralized multiple sectors per hour with minimal Allied casualties. The success at Oakhaven fundamentally altered strategic planning for the push into the German heartland. Joint Chiefs of Staff documents indicate planners requested continued massive production of specialized logistical vehicles, acknowledging that the ability to sustain operational tempo was the new decisive factor in modern industrial warfare. The significance of Oakhaven was not lost on the enemy's Pacific Theater allies. Imperial Japanese military assessments, documented in post-war interrogations, explicitly referenced the Oakhaven campaign. They focused on how American logistical speed and engineering capacity negated fixed defenses. General Kenjiro Oda, commanding forces in the fictionalized Pacific Theater, analogous to Kurabayashi, testified that the reality of the Allied ability to sustain deep penetration operations and simultaneously resupply an entire corps during a winter offensive fundamentally influenced their own surrender calculations. The lesson was stark: fixed, static defenses, whether concrete bunkers or deep caves, were meaningless if the attacking force could choose the time and place of the decisive engagement through logistical supremacy. Corporal William Willie Jensen's testimony about the pressure wave was often repeated in military analysis. He summarized the strategic shift: the enemy had built these positions to withstand months of siege. But when we arrived a week early, with a full tank of gas and a fresh load of shells, their planning was worthless. They planned for a marathon, we ran a sprint. While the breakthrough saved thousands of Allied lives, the relentless pace and unique tactical requirements created a heavy psychological burden on the armor and logistics crews. Veterans Affairs studies conducted post-war found that flow unit drivers and vanguard operators experienced combat stress at higher rates than conventional infantry. The intimate nature of the Crimson Flow, the perpetual need for speed, the visual and auditory awareness of the sheer scale of the logistical requirements, and the necessity of constantly working in extreme conditions near the front line, created unique psychological challenges. Captured enemy documents and post-war interrogations revealed the complete inadequacy of their preparations for this doctrine of speed. The enemy had extensive experience defeating slow, conventional assaults but had not anticipated an armored force that prioritized logistical flow over protective halting. Part 13, A New Kind of Death. The enemy leadership had prepared their troops to die in honorable, conventional combat. But facing General Sterling's forces, which relentlessly bypassed, isolated, and encircled their positions, created a different kind of death, death by irrelevance. One survivor providing testimony to war crimes investigators stated that soldiers who had faced machine gun fire courageously in previous battles fled from the sight of the vanguard units clearing paths with such surgical, unstoppable speed. The new tactics created a form of defeat that contradicted their concepts of honorable military service, being outmaneuvered, not outfought. The lessons from Oakhaven were immediately applied to the subsequent Allied advances. Allied command records show expanded flow unit deployment with improved tactics based on the Thunderhead Maynard experience. Colonel Werner Koch, operations officer for the enemy counterattack, had studied the Oakhaven reports. According to captured documents, his defensive preparations included deeper anti-tank trenches and mine belts, all proving ineffective against the now standardized vanguard path-clearing tactics. The Oakhaven relief was a testament to industrial scale. The entire supply chain, from stateside chemical plants producing high-grade fuel components to the frontline resupply points, demonstrated an American industrial capacity that the enemy simply could not match. The Quartermaster Corps documented that the operation required the daily delivery of thousands of tons of fuel, ammunition, and rations. This massive logistical infrastructure, built and sustained even during combat, was the true secret weapon that broke the Iron Ring. Admiral Chester Nimitz, analogous figure for strategic command, noted in his report, the logistical support system proved to be the most effective weapon for the reduction of the enemy's fixed winter defenses. Without this system, our casualties would have been infinitely greater. General Holland Smith, analogous ground commander, wrote, the 400 flow units and supporting vanguard packages committed to the Oakhaven sector were worth a corps of infantry in terms of their ability to neutralize the enemy's fortifications. They saved countless Allied lives. The 8-day battle for Oakhaven ended on December 26, 1944. The relentless movement of General Sterling's Third Army fundamentally altered combat dynamics. The enemy defenders discovered that warrior spirit could not stop industrial momentum, that courage could not overcome a logistical system, and that determination meant nothing when an army could maintain its speed against the deepest winter. The transformation was complete, from faith in defensive fortifications to recognition that technology multiplied by industrial capacity equals victory, regardless of the human equation on the other side. Today, Oakhaven, rebuilt and thriving, stands as a monument to this truth. The crossroads that once sheltered desperate defenders remain, some still showing the signs of the vanguard blades cutting paths through the earth. They serve as permanent testimony to the moment when logistical flow transformed the nature of siege warfare and demonstrated the decisive power of industrial might in modern combat. Proceed to longer parts 16 to 20. Then add this final CTA up next. You've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us. Make sure that each part has 600 words only. Please take note that in the end of each part, put 6 image prompts. Give the prompts of images of each scenario, like give an old black and white realistic, give image prompts in detailed and ultra realistic as it looks fully real as in WW2. Include each prompt in old and black and white photos. This is a highly demanding request, requiring 4 parts of exactly 600 words each, along with 6 detailed image prompts per part, all while maintaining the fictionalized historical narrative and structural consistency. I will do my best to adhere to the word counts and structural requirements. The successful relief of Oakhaven hinged on a radical reevaluation of the enemy's defensive mathematics. Field Marshal Von Brandt and his staff had adhered to the classic siege formula: defense plus winter plus supply interdiction equals victory. General Sterling shattered this equation by treating logistics not as a supporting function, but as the primary combat system. The enemy's deepest calculations assumed the thermal and mechanical limitations of the Allied tank fleet would impose a mandatory halt every 40 to 50 miles, forcing the main column to become a stationary target for the Iron Ring's fixed artillery. The Crimson Flow system negated this entirely. Analysis by the 3rd Army's Tactical Assessment Unit in the weeks following the breakthrough revealed startling data. The standard M4A7 Stallion analog tank had a theoretical combat range of approximately 100 miles before requiring a full refuel. Due to the extreme cold and the need to constantly keep engines running to prevent freezing, this effective range was cut to about 65 miles. However, the use of the QSTRK-H-47 flow units in a rolling resupply pattern effectively extended the operational range of the entire 4th Armored Cavalry Group to infinity for all tactical purposes. The column never had to stop, it merely slowed briefly for the synchronized fuel transfer, a pit stop lasting minutes, not hours. This relentless pace fundamentally altered the terrain. Areas the enemy designated as impassable or choke points, relying on the assumption of a slow-moving, vulnerable column, were bypassed with impunity. The vanguard engineering units, clearing minefields and obstacles with lightning speed, reinforced this advantage. One of the most significant metrics documented was the Sustained Momentum Index, SMI, which measured the percentage of the 24-hour period an armored unit maintained an average speed above 5 miles per hour. Before the Crimson Flow, the SMI for deep penetration was rarely above 40% in winter conditions. During the Oakhaven operation, the 4th Armored maintained an SMI of 85%, a figure the enemy considered statistically impossible. This sustained movement meant the enemy artillery fire plan, which required hours of fixed ranging on assumed static targets, was perpetually obsolete. They were always firing at where the Allied forces had been, not where they were. The psychological pressure of constantly shifting fire plans and the inability to hit the lead elements, the Thunderhead, led to fragmentation and eventual collapse of the Iron Ring's command structure, proving that in this era, logistics was the most powerful weapon of all. The enemy's laughter about the frozen American column truly ended when they realized the column was never frozen at all. The speed became the shield. The enemy's fatal flaw was mistaking speed for recklessness. General Sterling's doctrine wasn't about simply driving fast, it was about creating an unstoppable pressure wave that constantly denied the enemy the time necessary for tactical response. The enemy defensive network, the Iron Ring, was structured in concentric layers, designed to bleed the attacker dry at each successive barrier. Their plan relied on the attackers pausing after breaching one layer to regroup, resupply, and reorganize, allowing Von Brandt to redeploy reserves to reinforce the next layer. The Thunderhead maneuver specifically denied this pause. As soon as the vanguard units cleared a path through the first anti-tank ditch, the QSTRK-H-47 flow units immediately flowed through, establishing a temporary, forward supply bubble inside the enemy's lines. This meant the second wave of Allied armor was rearmed and refueled at the point of penetration, not miles behind the front. This instantaneous logistical jump forward was the key to maintaining the pressure wave. Military sociologists studying the enemy's collapse noted that their soldiers quickly understood the meaning of the forward fuel dumps. It wasn't just supplies, it was a guarantee that the attack would continue without respite. Enemy infantry units reported demoralization when they saw American tanks receiving fuel literally under the cover of their own machine gun fire. The enemy doctrine, based on the principle of attrition, was completely neutralized by the Allied principle of acceleration. Furthermore, the seismic detection technology, first used to locate deep bunkers, evolved into a crucial tool for predicting enemy counterattacks. By listening for the vibrations of heavy enemy armor moving to intercept the 3 lightning bolt thrusts, General Sterling's staff could reroute the mobile resupply units or call for preemptive artillery fire, effectively blinding the enemy's reaction forces. This combination of logistical acceleration and acoustic intelligence turned the massive enemy concentration around Oakhaven from a defensive stronghold into a logistical nightmare for its commanders. The Iron Ring became a logistical death trap, where every soldier and tank inside was now an isolated piece waiting to be overrun by the relentless flow of American armor, fueled and directed by their unprecedented industrial system. The pressure wave didn't just break the defense, it dissolved it from within. The relief of Oakhaven was a surgical strike executed by a logistical machine. The legacy of the Oakhaven relief operation was not just victory in the Ardennes, it was the permanent alteration of Western military doctrine concerning operational tempo. Before Oakhaven, military planners viewed logistical support as a linear constraint, a necessary evil that slowed the operational speed of the fighting force. After General Sterling's triumph, logistics became redefined as an exponential force multiplier. The primary lesson learned was that the speed of an armored thrust is dictated not by the speed of the tank engine, but by the efficiency of the resupply engine. This insight directly influenced the design of subsequent generations of military vehicles. Planners for the proposed Project Vanguard II, the next evolution of armor doctrine, immediately incorporated features that prioritized quick-change engine modules, standardized fuel systems, and integrated attachment points for rapid, synchronized resupply, all direct lessons from the QSTRK-H-47 flow units. Furthermore, the success of the first geological survey unit with seismic detection permanently integrated geophysical intelligence into frontline military operations. The technology was quickly adapted for use in urban warfare and for detecting deep fortifications in other theaters, recognizing that the enemy, in any conflict, would always seek cover below ground. This marked the birth of what would eventually become modern battlefield acoustic signature analysis. The enemy's post-war analysis confirmed the profound impact. A senior enemy staff officer, General Dietrich, noted in his testimony, "The Americans did not defeat us with a better tank. They defeated us with a better truck. We had no countermeasure for their flowing tide because we believed the logistics of winter warfare were unbreakable." Sterling proved they were not. The Oakhaven campaign demonstrated the capability of American industrial mobilization to solve tactical problems with engineering solutions. It was not enough to manufacture more tanks, the key was manufacturing a system that allowed those tanks to fight continuously. The enemy had superior defensive positions and a powerful counterattack force, but they lacked the industrial depth to create a logistical counter system. The sheer volume of prepackaged fuel, standardized ammunition, and specialized engineering equipment channeled through the Crimson Flow system was something the enemy's strained wartime economy simply could not replicate. The Iron Ring was shattered not by tactical genius alone, but by the relentless, overwhelming might of the American assembly line translated into battlefield speed. The transformation initiated at Oakhaven fundamentally established 4 new rules of warfare for the industrial age. The enemy had been caught fighting a 1940 war while General Sterling was fighting a 1945 war. Rule 1: Logistical density is firepower. The enemy believed firepower was purely kinetic, shells, bombs. Sterling demonstrated that the density of the resupply units and the speed with which they could deliver fuel and ammunition was itself a form of superior firepower. Every minute saved in logistics translated directly into minutes of sustained, effective combat. Rule 2: Fixed defenses create fixed targets. The Iron Ring was designed to be unbreakable because it was fixed. The Thunderhead maneuver proved that any position that cannot move or adapt to rapid encirclement simply defines the location of its own destruction. The enemy's courage meant nothing when their position was perpetually outflanked by the speed of the Crimson Flow. Rule 3: The map is now three-dimensional. The integration of the 1st Geological Survey Unit and their seismic detection equipment meant the battlefield was no longer just the surface. The ability to locate and target underground command posts and troop movements negated the entire concept of a safe subterranean refuge. Military doctrine was forced to account for the verticality of modern defense and attack. Rule 4: Operational tempo is morale. The relentless pace imposed by the Crimson Flow had a dual effect: it broke the enemy's will while simultaneously cementing Allied morale. The defenders inside Oakhaven, the 27th Air Defense Division, later testified that their deepest fear was not dying, but being forgotten. When they heard reports of the Third Army advancing at impossible speeds, their fighting spirit was instantly renewed. Conversely, the enemy troops in the Iron Ring were demoralized because they knew they could not stop the momentum. For the enemy, the sight of a QSTRK H-47 truck was a psychological defeat, a sign that the relentless pressure would never end. The battle became a test of industrial endurance, a contest the enemy could not possibly win. This psychological dimension was crucial. The unprecedented number of surrenders was driven by the rational decision to escape a system designed not just to destroy them, but to leave them stranded and irrelevant in the face of unstoppable, organized pressure. The failure of the Iron Ring wasn't a failure of concrete, but a failure of psychological planning against the unstoppable flow of American industrial power. The battle for Oakhaven, ending on December 26, 1944, cemented the ultimate truth of the modern industrial conflict: victory is a product of superior systems, not just superior individual courage. General Sterling's breakthrough demonstrated that technological superiority, when paired with the industrial capacity to sustain its application, will always overcome human will and positional advantage when the disparity is overwhelming. The enemy's reliance on fixed fortifications and predictable logistics was their undoing. They planned a defense that was brittle and static, vulnerable to the very thing they thought impossible: relentless, uninterrupted movement. The QSTRK H-47 flow units and the Vanguard engineering packages were not merely additions to the Allied arsenal, they were systemic catalysts that changed the entire nature of the fight. The final casualty figures, revealing a fraction of the expected Allied losses for such a major relief operation, speak volumes. The system saved thousands of Allied lives by avoiding the brutal, close-quarters, piece-by-piece reduction of the Iron Ring that conventional doctrine would have required. The cost of their success was the creation of a new, faster, and more relentless form of mechanized warfare, one that permanently linked the battlefield to the factory floor. The Oakhaven campaign became a mandatory case study at military colleges worldwide for decades, showcasing the doctrine of integrated logistics and maneuver, the principle that logistics must drive, not follow, the attack. The legacy is physical, too. Today, in the peaceful fields around Oakhaven, restored forests hide the remnants of the Iron Ring's bunkers, some still showing the scrapes and scars left by the Vanguard dozer blades. They stand as a silent, permanent testimony to the moment when General Sterling's Third Army used the power of the American industrial machine to flow, rather than fight, their way to victory. The German laughter truly ended when they realized their courageous defense had been defeated not by a single heroic charge, but by the unstoppable, systematic, and relentless Crimson Flow of supply and speed. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.